Hello, everybody. It's been a while since you've heard anything from me, especially anything Pokemon related. Um, but New Generation is out. I've been playing a little bit. I've been having a look over things. I just kind of wanted to make a video because the usage stats have just come out for the first month. It's been a crazy OU meta game, and I wanted to go over every new Pokemon that is not in OU. So every new Pokemon that's been moved down to what is going to be UU, and by extension, probably every tier below that as well. There's a lot of returning threats, which are going to be kind of crazy with Terrastalize as well, but I wanted to just give a quick analysis of everything here and how good I think it's going to be overall. We're going in alphabetical order, and there's quite a lot to get through because look, I had to go 2 boxes to cover every new Pokemon here. It's kind of crazy. Starting us off, we have Arboliva, and this thing, like grass normal type, I don't know. I don't think this thing's going to be all that great. Its ability is basically like grassy terrain, a grassy surge, so like a set of terrain, but you have to get hit for it to actually activate, which kind of makes it strictly worse than Rillaboom, right? Because with Rillaboom, you just came in, you just got the terrain up. For this, you actually have to get hit by a move for the ability to even trigger, which kind of sucks. Like it kind of means that you're just never gonna you got to take a hit. And this thing's bulk is okay. It's not bad. Like 78, 90, 109. It's okay, but like it's not. Its typing is not fantastic. Like that grass normal is like that gives it an extra weakness to fighting. It doesn't really give it any resists. Looking at its move pool, it's like some of this is okay. It's got a high attack stat, so it could hit reasonably hard with like um, choice specs and like leaf storm stuff like that. Its speed tier is horrendous though, so it lends itself to Trick Room fairly well, I think, but it just doesn't really have the speed to be a threat. And the utility of it is limited because I don't know how many hits this thing is going to be taking in order to set up terrain. Like it's just generally you don't want that. But you know, I guess if you could switch it in as a resist, you could get a free terrain up, which for the time being is the only way we have of staying up terrain in this tier, or at least grassy terrain in this tier, because Rillaboom's not back yet, nor are its like pre-evolutions, I guess. So you know, overall, I don't think this is going to be too good. I see it dropping probably to RU or NU. I don't see it staying around in UU, especially with some of the other threats we've got here. Other threats like Armarouge, which I think is going to be insanely good. Insanely strong. This thing has weak armor and flash fire, 2 great abilities. It's got good stats for the most part, and a fantastic signature move here, an armor cannon. This thing could be really threatening, because weak armor giving it a form of speed control, allowing it to like actually get the jump on certain threats pretty decently. Um, if you get hit by a move, it's got access to like Endure. Um, you've got a ton of great moves on here, like Focus Blast, like Overheat, Expanding Force, setting it like opening up terrain strategies for the future, possibly. Aura Sphere. Aura Sphere with Terrastalize Fighting is probably going to be a really good set. Shadow Ball as well as an option to hit ghosts. And to hit other psychic types, which is really strong. You could do a ton, and not to mention Terra Blast as well. You could do a ton of different Terrastalize strategies with this. I think with like heavy duty boots, um, or even a choice set could work with this. It's just really strong. Good offensive typing, Terrastalizing, fighting, or fairy, or ghosts all seem like good options on this. Or you could just Terrastalize fire to boost power. I think this is going to be a huge threat. It's like the only thing not going for it is like the speed tier is not fantastic, but there are ways of dealing with that, especially with weak armor, um, or with like other forms like team support. With hazards, this thing I think is going to shred. Right, Bombardier. This thing is interesting. It gets Rocky Pele, which is basically stab on rock moves, so it's got triple stab. Flying Dark. It's a decent typing. Obviously, a bit rock's weak. Um, it's got quite a good move pool and decent stats. Like it's not the best thing out there, but like it's got powerful moves, right? Brave Bird, um, I guess acrobatics, knockoff is obviously superstar. It also gets a bunch of like Stone Edge as well. It effectively gets stab on, so that's like triple stab. This could be a threat, like it's like a choice scarf or a choice band Pokemon. And with the Terra, you could sort of go anywhere with this. You could give it extra stab in any direction, like go Rock type for effectively double stab on Stone Edge, which would hit really hard, or flying, or you could sort of defensively do it to cover some of your weaknesses, maybe, um, like get rid of your Rock's weakness. It has a couple of setup options, like I guess Hone Claws, which Hone Claws with Stone Edge, I guess is a decent combination, right? Um, I think overall, though, I don't know if this thing's going to stick around in UU. Like the power level is looking really high. It make for a nice choice scarfer, especially with that speed tier. U-turn is very nice. Knockoff is like a real valuable thing. I think maybe just on having knockoff alone, since not a lot of stuff has knockoff at the moment, it might be useful. It also gets stealth rock, so you could obviously like run a lead set where you set up rocks and sort of knock off stuff and annoy it. I think this could be all right. Maybe more so in RU than or like a lower tier than UU, but we'll have to see. Maybe it'll be good. We'll have a look at. Belly Bolt. This thing is kind of funny looking, kind of funny looking, but its stats are not great. Like I guess it's reasonably bulky, but its typing's not like defensive typing is not very good. Like pure electric doesn't do much for it. Um, You could fix that with Terra, but obviously defensive Terra is not as attractive as an offensive Terra. Its ability is kind of interesting. Basically, when it gets hit by a contact move, it becomes charged, so it basically powers up its next electric type move. This could be interesting as like a wall, um, like a stall type Pokemon. It does get reliable recovery, I guess, in Slack of. It's got screens, which it could be an interesting support mod with like screens and discharge to spread paralysis. Its move pool's pretty shallow. Like it doesn't get much that isn't a water an electric or a water type move. Um, Offensively, I guess it's got some momentum potential in Volt Switch, and with Terra, like I guess Terra Water, you could make it a bit bulkier. Like if you Terra Water and you use like Discharge and Slack Off and some stuff like this, maybe like Acid Spray. Uh, I'm really scraping the bottom of the barrel for this Pokemon. I don't think this Pokemon's going to stay UU. I think this is probably going lower. But in like a much lower tier, it could be a decent wall. Could be okay. Brambleghast. This one is kind of interesting. I haven't really looked much into this Pokemon. It gets +1 attack in if it gets hit by a wind move, which I assume means like a flying type move. Although I'm not sure. Like if that means a flying type move, I guess that's interesting. I guess +1 attack. Wind move immunity. Oh, you know what it probably means? It probably means like ominous wind or um, something that has like wind in the name. Because I don't think it's immune to flying, right? I doubt that's what that means. I mean, we'll look it up. We'll we'll look up Brambleghast and Wind Rider. Wind move. Okay, yeah, it does mean what I think it means. So like anything that's like a wind attack, but it's not like any flying type move. I guess it's kind of interesting. Like it's immune to hurricane and stuff like that. It could be interesting for countering certain things, like Specs Hurricane Pokemon. Its stats are okay. Like its speed is fine. Its attack's pretty high. Grass Ghost is a decent typing. It does have quite a lot of weaknesses though. When I look at its move pool, it's got some decent offensive options here, like Shadow Sneak. Doesn't really have any setup options though, like no Swords Dance or anything like that. Um, it's got a lot of special moves despite not being a special attacker, which isn't never great. Also, not really much reliable physical ghost stab outside of Shadow Sneak. Phantom Force kind of sucks. It's got Rapid Spin, so like, maybe it could be like a defensive spinner of some sort. And that could solve its speed issues, but its defense is a shit. So to put it bluntly, like this is not good. And its typing doesn't really accentuate that. I guess with Terrastalize, you could do some interesting stuff with this. But like it doesn't really have the move pool to support that. Like realistically, you're not going to be getting much out of that Terastalize except maybe like um, making it a bit bulkier. Once again, I think this is probably going lower. This is not going to stay UU, I don't think. Especially not with like Bishop is in this tier now with you Violate. Uh, so I don't know if this one is gonna last really. Um, it could support move pools lacking. I guess spikes is nice. It's definitely it could be a spike like a faster spike setter. Maybe make use of leech seed or something like that. Um, Once again, decent. Not sure it's going to stay UU necessarily. Probably going lower. Brute Bonnet is an interesting one. This has actually been seeing some use in OU because it's one of the ancient Pokemon, and therefore it gets a boost in Sun, um, which is it also has chlorophyll. Uh, sorry, not chlorophyll. It kind of has like half chlorophyll because this is like a speed boost in the Sun, right? Um, or like an attack boost in the Sun rather. But like not a speed boost. So, well, actually, wait a minute. Let me check because can you make this thing get a speed boost in the Sun? Probably not, right? Yeah, that's not like this thing's quite slow. It does hit fairly hard because it's like a high attack stat. Grass Dark's pretty good offensive type and it gets some good moves as well. So I have people see people use this on like a Sun team and getting an attack boost and then using like growth to make it kind of strong. It's strong and it has access to Sucker Punch as well. So that that can make it hit relatively hard. Along with like close combat is pretty good. It gets seed bomb. It gets bullet seed, and that could make use of a new item called loaded dice, which people are making use of, which basically means that multi-hit attacks always hit at least 4 times, meaning they hit 4 or 5 times, meaning that bullet seed is basically 100 base power, um, which is really good. 100 or 125 if it hits 5 times. Apart from that, though, this Pokemon has a lot of issues. This is really slow. Even if you do get a boost, which you usually don't, because um, it's pretty slow, and so it has to rely on Sucker Punch. You can like Terastalize Dark to make that more powerful. You can Terastalize it to a more defensive typing to allow yourself to set up. Um, the main problem though is that there's not a setter of Sun in this tier because Torkoal is still OU. Because it's being used with the more powerful ancient Pokemon like Roaring Moon and stuff like that. So to make this work, you kind of need Sun. Without Sun, this thing's too slow to really do anything. Its bulk is okay, but its typing isn't good on the defensive end of things, and I guess Terastallization could fix that, but its move pool is a bit lacking. Like in well, I don't know. Its move pool's okay actually. You got close combat and stopping tantrum are fine as coverage options, I guess. And with Terrorblast, you can cover some of that, but I don't think this is strong without Sun at all, and there's no Sun at the moment, so I think this probably is not going to see much use outside of maybe like Sucker Punch shenanigans. But outside of Sun, it doesn't have a great way of setting up because like growth is not good outside of Sun, really. So yeah, that's probably not. In contrast, this Pokemon I think is going to see a lot more usage on weather teams because this thing is really good, at least in theory. So Slush Rush, obviously giving it a huge speed boost in snow with 73. That hits like if you go 252, that hits like nearly 500 speed, which is very fast and good attack as well. Has access to Ice Spinner, which is a cool new move that ends terrain. You got Icicle Crash as well if you want to go for flinch shenanigans, and good coverage and like Earthquake, Superpower, Play Rough. Is even priority in there with Ice Shard. This Pokemon in the new Snow weather, which is basically like nerfed Hail, effectively, doesn't do damage over time. It just kind of um, it just kind of boosts like Ice. Um, activates those ice abilities, and I think it boosts ice type moves a little bit as well now. Although I might be wrong on that. Still very early in the gen, so there's a lot of stuff that's kind of unsure. Either way, this thing I've seen people using in OU even with like and now that you've got Slowking with Chilly Reception, which basically is teleport, but it also sets up snow. And this thing is not necessarily like frail, because look at that HP stat. Like, it's gonna be hard to take this thing out in one hit, just because of how fucking high this HP stat is, even uninvested. And it also gets access to Belly Drum. So, yeah, with Belly Drum, you can inhale, become really fast and really strong. Or not hail, sorry, snow. And of course, now that snow is actually kind of good, it's kind of usable with some more support. A bomber snow is also in this tier, which sets up snow now. So you could use it with that. I think this is going to be a big threat. This is definitely one to watch out for, I think, and this may end up staying in the tier, even getting banned if snow ends up being as good as it seems like it's going to be. Especially when we get Pokemon back like a load of Ninetales, right? Which with the Aurora Veil and the fast support. So that's a Titan. I think this is a real one to really watch out for. Daxbun, this Pokemon is kind of funny looking as well. It's got a nice ability, immune to fire type moves, and gets a defense raise if it gets hit by a fire type move. But its stats leave a lot to be desired. I think like decent speed, but its offenses aren't very good. Its defenses are middling, really. And looking at its move pool, it doesn't get the best. It gets some decent offensive moves, but they're not very high base power, and this thing does not hit very hard. It gets a couple of support options like Wish, Wish and Roar, which I guess could be useful, but it doesn't, and Yawn, I guess, it doesn't really have the support move pool that you'd want from a Pokemon like this, so I don't think it's going to be all that good. With Terastallization, I suppose you could sort of do some interesting tech with it to try and improve its defensive typing. But I just don't think it's going to be very good, to be honest. It's going to be a little bit underwhelming. This is probably going to drop a couple tiers lower, so I don't really have much more to say about Daxbun. Same kind of true for Dunsparce, which is, it's basically just Dunsparce with better stats. Like, it's got pretty good HP, its bulk is okay, its offenses are okay, and it does get a pretty large move pool, right? You've got a lot of stuff here. Boom Burst stands out as kind of being kind of cool in conjunction with Calm Mind. Boom Burst hit pretty hard, and of course you can Terastallize normal to make that even more powerful, or you could Terastallize into another typing like Steel, or Ghost or something to cover this thing's like weaknesses and make it a bit bulkier. It's got Glare, which is nice. It's a really good move. Like it's Thunder Wave, but it's 100% accurate and has a lot more PP, and that's a form of speed control you can use against people. Ice Spinner, you got some support moves in here as well, like Stealth Rock, Yawn. This could be okay. Once again, I don't think it's going to be Yu. I think this is going to go lower. Serene Grace is nice, and that could be good in conjunction with like Body Slam and some of these other moves here that could have like nice secondary effects. But I don't know. I just don't see this thing being super good. It's a bit slow. It's a bit too slow to be an offensive threat. I could see maybe sets with Coil or something like that. Like Coil with Body Slam, and then maybe Terastallizing into Fairy or in a Ghost or Steel or something like that, or even Water to like make yourself a bit bulkier. And then spam Body Slam for paralysis. That would be a very annoying set. But with the way the power level is looking and some of the other threats in here, I think this is probably going lower. NU or RU or whatever. So yeah, not a lot I can say about the Dunsparce apart from that. Okay, these are two big ones, right? Espartha and Farigiraf. So Espartha is this Pokemon has been being used in OU. This is really strong. So I'm really surprised it's kind of dropped off. I think it's because people have only started catching on to it recently. But this thing is insane. This thing has Speed Boost, first of all, one of the best abilities in the game. It also has Stored Power, it has Calm Mind, and it has Roost. And with a Speed Boost, your Stored Power is getting more powerful every turn, regardless of what you do. Its stats are pretty okay. It's like decent HP. Its offense is kind of middling, right? 101 and 105. 105 is a decent speed tier, and of course it doesn't matter so much because you have speed boost, so you can invest in your bulk. And people are running like max defense on this and just kind of setting up calm minds. The only real weakness is that you're a bit weak to priority, but here's the part, right? You run Dazzling Gleam and you run like Terastallized Fairy, or you run Terra Blast with Terastallized Fighting. It gets some other interesting stuff as well. It gets Shadow Ball if you want to hit Ghost types a bit harder. It gets Lumina Crash. This is a signature move, I think, which you could use, I guess, as an alternative to Stored Power. Is a bit, although Stored Power is just better in most cases, but that's kind of interesting. It gets some decent covers like Energy Ball, Flash Cannon. Not that you're going to need those because this just hits incredibly hard, and Dazzling Gleam covers the one thing that really switches into you being dark types, right? Barring Terastallization. And Terra Fighting might be better in some cases, like Terra Blast Fighting, because that hits Steel types a bit harder. Depending, this Pokemon I think is going to be incredibly good. Like, like this set is evil. This is seeing use in OU, and it was really good. So I watch out for this Pokemon. I think this thing might get banned. If not, it's going to be insanely good. Farigiraf is kind of in a similar vein, but it's a bit worse. So you don't have Speed Boost. You have Armor Tail, which is a good ability, but it's not Speed Boost. It's straight up is not as good as that, but it's okay. It's not bad. It kind of does a similar thing with like its stats are okay. Like it's got higher special attack and HP, but lower speed. The speed is really the problem here. It's like it's not gonna spiral the way a Spartha is gonna spiral because it doesn't have that speed boost every turn. But you do have agility and Calm Mind, which it's a bit of a budget version of a Spartha, but it it does have that nice priority immunity that Pokemon doesn't have. And then you can run Stored Power, and you can run like a Terra Blast Fighting similarly to beat its checks. Like this, Stored Power mods are just way better because of Terrastallize. Because the one thing that beat you before, being like bulky dark types like Umbreon or whatever, they just don't beat you now because you can just do this. It also gets some other stuff. Like I think it gets it's a decent move pool here. Gets dual screens, I guess, if you want to fiddle around with that. Don't know what good that would be, but it could do something, I guess. Twin Beam is an interesting signature move. It's like a dual wing beat kind of thing, where it's 80 base power, but it hits twice. Maybe it could be useful, but I think overall this is going to be more stored power stuff, but it's probably not going to stay in UU because this Pokemon is just better. So this is going to be a budget version. It's probably going to go down to a lower tier, like RU or NU or whatever when those come around. Next up we have Graphi, or Graphii, or Graphite. I don't know how to pronounce this, to be honest. This thing is kind of interesting. It's sort of a support mon, mostly. Good speed, decent other stats. I guess this, other stats are nothing to write home about. But this thing is it's Prankster, right? Prankster Unburden. It's kind of like Lipard or what's it called? It's got a lot of utility moves. So you've got stuff like Foul Play, you've got Parting Shot, you've got Super Fang, Taunt, like Toxic. This is a good stall breaker. So like Taunt shutting down like setup sweepers, Parting Shot providing like momentum for your team. Knockoff is really, once again, really strong to have because not a lot of stuff has it. This thing I think is going to be an enabler for a lot of setup sweepers. Like it's going to come in, it's going to taunt to shut down hazard leads and stuff like that. I suppose like theoretically it has offensive potential because of Prankster, and because of knockoff and stuff like I guess Gunk Shot, knockoff doesn't really have any like good physical normal stab, I guess, apart from Facade. So yeah, I don't think this thing I think is going to be mainly for setup strategies, for like supporting team support. But I think it's really good at that, so it may stay in this tier depending on what kind of stuff we see. I can see this being a really good partner to some of the more scary setup sweepers. Terrastalize, I guess, what does Terrastalize do for this? I feel like this wouldn't want to be the mon that you Terrastalize. You wouldn't want to do that because you've got bigger threats to do it to instead. But if you're going to, I'd say like maybe something like Dark to boost knockoff and to or just if you're running it more defensively, I guess, trying to take hits in a pinch, maybe water or something like that. Um, but yeah, I think this is gonna be a good support mon. Pretty much, that appears to be how it's designed, um, and it's probably gonna do a pretty good job at that. Um, Iron Jagulis. This is probably one of the worst of the Paradox Pokemon. Like, its typing is okay, I guess. Its Dark Flying is not bad. It's like Yveltal typing or Honchkrow or something like that. Its stats don't look terrible, but I think this thing is just worse than Hydreigon in a lot of ways. Um, uh, its its speed tier is okay, I guess. Its special attack is decent. Um, and I look at its move pool, and I guess it gets some decent stuff like Dark Pulse. The problem is the moves are a bit weak because Hydreigon has Draco Meteor. It has like big, powerful, splashable damage like that. This thing obviously doesn't because it's not a dragon type, and like its best, I guess, special stab would be like Hurricane, which is it's okay, but it's gonna miss 70%. They never trust 70%. So outside of Rain, this could be good on Rain. Like specs on Rain could be all right. I just think it's a little bit outclassed. Its typing doesn't. As for what Terrastalize does for this, I mean, I guess you could Terrastalize Dragon. I guess maybe you could Terrastalize Ground to beat Electric types or something with Earth power, or you could Terrastalize, or you could Terrastalize um, like Water to beat uh, Ice types with Terrastalize Water with Fire Blast or something. I don't know. Like I just feel like this is a bit outclassed. It's not going to be particularly great, but I think it may stay UU just on account of it being quite cracked in terms of stats. Um, the when if terrain ever comes back, I mean terrain is in this tier technically because you've got you've got what's it Pincursion. So with terrain, I guess with getting a attack boost, it could be kind of scary. Um, with like Terra Dark, just to boost its stabs. Like I don't know, I just feel like having a Rock's weakness is not something this Pokemon appreciates either, and it doesn't have. I don't think it has Nasty Plot either. No, that was a big thing that made Hydreigon so threatening was Nasty Plot. It was like if you came in and you thought it would be Scarfed, and then it kind of Nasty Plotted on you. Um, your opponent could be in trouble, but with this thing, it doesn't really have that. So yeah, that's my thoughts on it. Iron Thorns. This is a lot better, I think. I mean, its stats are very similar to like Tita, but it's a bit faster. You have Dragon Dance. You have some offensive. You have like Tita. You have a huge move pool, huge offensive move pool. Stealth Rock, Taunt, T Wave, Spikes. So this thing can be a hazard setter. It's very bulky. It benefits from Sandstorm if you can find a way of getting Sandstorm in this tier. Um, very bulky. Not quite T-Tar bulky, but it's still very bulky. So it could be a really good hazard setter, I think. And I think it could sweep because like Dragon Dance with certain Terra types, say, like what your Stab, Rock and Electric, you're gonna get walled hard by ground types. You could Terra Water and use something like does it have like Aqua Tail? I don't think it has Aqua Tail, but you could Terra Water and use like Terra Blast to beat ground types. Or you could Terra Flying to just float above them, them ground types, and fuck them over that way. It gets Body Press, meaning that defensive sets could be more viable. I think this Pokemon is actually going to be really good. The only reason it hasn't been seeing use in OU is just because there's so many other ridiculous threats in OU. I guess Swords Dance as well, which is nuts. Like this could be a real big wall breaker if you play it right. And taunt, like I think this thing's gonna be top tier in UU. To be honest, this is probably gonna stick around. So yeah, that's what I think about Iron Thorn. So Cloth. Cloth is interesting. I think um, it's got okay stats, I guess. Nothing to write home about. It's really what it is here is the move pool, which is pretty good. Um, strong stab, stone edge, some decent coverage options like crab hammer to beat ground types, and stuff like knockoff, which is obviously really valuable to have. But the main thing is the ability Anger Shell, which basically when you get below half HP, you get a free boost, like a free Omni boost, pretty much. So like +1 attack, special attack, and speed, which is pretty good. It's not like amazingly good though, and at +1, this thing still isn't going to be super strong. Terastallizing Water with Crab Hammer could be a pretty good strat because it would allow you to beat like ground types and I guess just hit a bit harder generally. Like you could run like knockoff, stone edge, crab hammer, and then like swords dance, and then like you could SD when they take you under, and then you've got your thing up. You terrastallize water, and then you can kind of fuck some stuff up. This thing, I don't know. I don't know if it's gonna stay UU. I think its stats are a bit lacking. I think its typing is a bit lacking. I think um, if it can pull off what it's supposed to do, it's gonna. I imagine it being similar to a Pokemon like Barbaracle, where like Barbaracle wasn't a good Pokemon really. It was just that it had a good boosting move and it had the move pool to make use of it. I think it's a bit like Barbaracle, where it might be too strong for RU, but not strong enough for UU. But that's just a theory. I don't know about what's going to come of that. Killer Wattrel. This thing is like kind of like baby Zapdos, I guess. it's it's kind of like Zapdos but worse, right? Like worse ability. Although I guess Wind Power is kind of interesting. You can use Tailwind to get a superpowered attack. Competitive is a decent way of punishing Intimidate and Defog. And I guess all of its abilities are situationally good, I think, depending on what you're up against. But obviously, it can't have all of them at once. Its speed is very good. I think this Pokemon could be a decent choice scarfer or a decent specs user, especially on like a terrain team or a rain team or something. You've got Volt Switch, you've got T-Bolt, you've got Hurricane, which is why this would be good for rain. You've got Tailwind to make use of that ability if you want to. And then you can have something like Weather Ball to hit on rain. Or you could have... this doesn't get Rising Voltage, I don't believe, which... unfortunate. That's kind of where its move pool ends, unfortunately. It doesn't get much else. It gets Agility, which... I mean, it's already pretty fast. What it lacks is power, really. That's not a very high attack stat. It's not... It's like Zapdos if Zapdos was the other way around, right? Because Zapdos has got, like, that in a Spatak, and then it's got that in speed. And this Pokemon obviously does not have the bulk of Zapdos. Heavy duty boots, I think, could be good on it, or a choice item. I feel like that might be all there is to say about this Pokemon. Like, what else is that? It gets Roost. I guess it could have some longevity with Roost. You could kind of play it like worse Zapdos in this tier. And I guess Terastallization could give it some options. Terastallizing Water with Weather Ball, maybe, in rain. As a way to break through some things. But, yeah, this thing might end up going lower. Now we get to another one that I really want to talk about, Mabostiff. This thing, I think, is going to be really strong. At the very least, it's going to be pretty usable because it has 3 pretty good abilities, I would say, or two pretty good abilities, and what I think is an amazing ability. So Intimidate is obviously always good. Guard Dog, I guess, is just the opposite of that. You're just immune to Intimidate, and you actually get an attack boost, so that could be a way of punishing certain Intimidate Pokemon. And you're also immune to phasing as well. But Stakeout, I think, is the really big one. Stakeout is an ability that, in the past, I think I think it's fundamentally a very good ability that has just not been on very good Pokemon. Like in the past, you had like Gumshoos and Thievul and other stuff that had it, which they just weren't fast enough or threatening enough to make use of it. Because what this ability does is if they switch out, they take double damage. So your attack goes from 120 to 240 if they switch out, basically, which is insane. That's incredibly strong. But the Pokemon that had it before, they weren't very strong and they weren't very fast. This thing has a decent speed tier of like 85, which I think makes it an ideal choice scarfer. It's a very good choice scarf speed tier because it means you outspeed most of like the unboosted meta. Now the real sad thing is this Pokemon does not get knockoff, which if it did, it would be really fucking good. This Pokemon would be incredibly good if it got knockoff. Unfortunately, it doesn't. But it does have Crunch, and it does have some stuff like, I guess, Fire Fang. Its move pool is honestly a little bit lacking outside of knockoff, or not knockoff, outside of Crunch. It doesn't even have knockoff. I think the move pool unfortunately lets this thing down a bit. Like if it got close combat or something, that'd be incredible. It does not have close combat. Its moves are a bit low power. Like Ice Play Rough is okay, I guess. It's a decent way to hit fighting types. Wild Charge is decent. That's a decently high power, I guess. Lack of close combat is really going to hurt this thing. It doesn't really have a good way to hit steel types. Or like other dark types. Which is a bit sad. If it got knockoff, it wouldn't matter because knockoff would chunk them so hard anyway. But I still think it's going to be good because Terra Dark with choice item like a choice scarf or even a band in conjunction with Stakeout, that could be an effective revenge kill. Like you come in with this thing, you click Crunch, like they either stay in and they get revenge killed or they switch out to something else to take it. But that thing takes double damage, which if you Terrestrialize Dark as well, that's going to be an incredibly powerful move. I don't think you'd really want to Terrestrialize any other type on this thing, because that's just so powerful. Like, why would you turn that down, you know? I think this thing might be really good. Unfortunately, I think the move pool lets it down a bit, and that may send it into like a lower tier. But I'm looking forward to this thing. I guess it does have some other options as well, like Sub and Taunt, and it has the speed to be decent with that. Unfortunately, it doesn't have any setup of any type except for like Hone Claws, which it could be okay, I guess. Sub Hone Claws, or Taunt Hone Claws or something. But I think Choice is going to be better on this. I'm looking forward to it. Oiklong. This thing is weird. There's actually two versions of this, and one of them is slightly different, but they have roughly the same abilities. They have the same abilities. This thing is kind of bulky, although not super bulky, and it's got decent offense. Once again, its move pool is just not very good. Like, it doesn't get Earthquake. It gets like Body Slam and Body Press, which is nice for a defensive Pokemon. Play Rough is always good, but no Earthquake. No real boosting option. Like, there's no Bulk Up or Iron Defense or anything like that. No way to boost its defenses, really, to benefit something like Thick Fat, which is a really nice ability. Honestly, I think this thing's kind of trash, and I think it's probably going to go a lot lower in the tiering rung. It's to the point where I don't even see much positive to say about this Pokemon. I just think it's kind of bad. It doesn't have a support move pool, really. It doesn't have offensive options that are good. It doesn't have any boosting options. It just doesn't really have anything. In contrast, Pawmot, I think, has quite a lot going for it. First of all, two good abilities, Volt Absorb and Iron Fist. It's got pretty good stats. Electric Fighting is a really good offensive typing. That hits a lot of stuff hard. You've got good moves, Close Combat, Volt Switch, Play Rough, what else is here? Like Ice Punch, Priority and Mark Punch. You've got Wild Charge for your other stab. Powerful moves, and Bulk Up as well. This thing, its bulk is pretty bad, but I think as a choice Pokemon, this could be effective. Like a Choice Band or a Choice Scarf, perhaps, with CC, Wild Charge, Volt, and maybe like Play Rough or something. Not that, no, Play Rough. Like a mixed Scarf set. Although it's not really mixed. A Volt Switch is just there to get you out of there. It's not really there to do damage. But, it's nice. But also bulk up. Like you could run bulk up with, I guess, like Drain Punch. It doesn't get Drain Punch. Does not get Drain Punch. Well, you know, bulk up with CC is still going to be quite nice. I feel like. Bulk up with, you know, this thing I think could be really good. It's got a couple of support options as well. You've got stuff like Wish, although I don't think it really has the stats to make use of support move pools. But it does have another move which I want to mention, and that's Revival Blessing, which may be one of the most stupid moves that Game Freak has ever created. It was so ridiculous they couldn't even get it to work on Showdown properly when the generation actually launched. But what this does is it basically is a revive. Like you press this move, it doesn't even make you faint. So it's like Healing Wish makes you faint for, you know, a full restore. Basically, this move, sorry, doesn't make you faint. It just you use it. It only has 1 PP to be fair, but you just use it and it revives a Pokemon, which actually could make a support set on this kind of viable, even though its stats are not suited for it. Where you could run like Wish and maybe like does it get knockoff? No, it's like Mark Punch maybe. Brick Break for getting through screens or something. I don't know. Like you T Wave. There we go. You could run like T Wave, Wish, um, something like that. Just because this move is so good, like it really is it really is just because Revival Blessing is kind of nuts. Which actually, talking of Revival Blessing, here's another one that also gets Revival Blessing. We kind of spoiled that. But this Pokemon, I think, has some other stuff going for it. It's got pretty decent offenses. Bug Psychic is a decent typing. I didn't mention Terrastallize with Pawmon actually, but I guess you could there's be some Terrastallize options. There's just so many options for stuff with Terra now. Like I feel like with this maybe Terra fighting to boost it up or like a different Terra type. I think with this you just want to boost CC, right? You just want to go fighting and fuck shit up. Unless you were doing the Revival Blessing thing, I guess. This thing could also use Revival Blessing, but it's a lot slower, which means that you're probably not going to get it off as much. Its bulk is a little bit better though, it's got decent offense. Like the speed lends it to Trick Room quite well, and I think this Pokemon might get Trick Room as well. It does get access to Trick Room, so Trick Room strats looking kind of viable in this tier. This Pokemon could definitely help those out a bit. Overall, this thing looks interesting. I think this move may end up becoming a problem. We'll have to see how broken it is. This thing has some support options as well, like a Memento. It has reliable recovery. It's got a pretty big move pool. Honestly, I am gonna have to like see this thing in action to make a judgment on what it does, because it's kind of not obvious at first what this Pokemon does. It's one of those things that you're gonna have to look at it. But I think it will probably be like offensive in Trick Room, or it'll be support with Revival Blessing, and the Terra will probably be like a defensive Terra maybe to like let it set up, let it get the Revival Blessing off, onto something else, or it'll be like maybe an offensive Terra. I could see what kind of switches into Bug Psychic, like Steel types, right? But I can't see many ways to get rid of Steel types except for like running Terra Blast with something. Not Trick. Like Terra Blast with something. I think this Pokemon will be more likely to use Terra defensively, just because of its overall stats. But we'll see. Rev of Room is definitely a Pokemon that's going to use Terra offensively. Got some pretty decent abilities. I think Filter is probably better, because that's going to give you a bit more longevity overall. This Pokemon is pretty fast, relatively fast, and pretty strong as well, with decent defenses. Pretty good typing in Poison Steel, right? A lot of resists. Gets Shift Gear, which I think is going to be what this Pokemon is going to be used for. It's got some support options as well, like Haze, Parting Shot, Toxic, T-Spikes, Taunt, which is nice. But Shift Gear on a Pokemon with this stat spread is looking pretty clean. And you've got stuff like Iron Head, like Gunk Shot. That's going to hit pretty hard. You can Terra offensively to make that better, or you could Terra defensively into something like Flying. to sort of dodge the ground moves, or into water for just better defensive typing in general. You could just Terra Pure Steel maybe to power up your Iron Head and make yourself less weak to ground. I feel there's a lot of Terra options for this. Life Orb maybe. Something like I think Shift Gear is gonna be the main use case of this thing. To be honest, it doesn't really make a good choice there because it doesn't have like. I guess it has Parting Shot, which is okay, and Iron Defense. Uh, I guess Iron Defense for the no body press though, and this thing doesn't exactly have the best defense in the world. So yeah, I think Shift Gear is probably gonna be the main thing for this one. It does have a signature move and Spin Out, but that lowers your speed, so I don't think we're gonna see that. Because you don't really want to lower your speed if you're trying to sweep. Sandy Shocks. I think this Pokemon is going to be insanely good. Good speed tier. 101, like that's the ultimate speed creep, right? You beat base 100s and base 95s, which are very common. 331 is a great speed tier. Electric Ground, I think, is a decent typing. You've got good moves. Volt Switch, Earth Power, Power Gem to hit flying types, I guess. Not flying types. You'd be hitting them anyway. What walls you? Like other electric types? No. Electric Ground's pretty good actually, right? I guess other ground types kind of annoy you. So for Terra options with this, I feel like you're maybe going to see like Terra Water with Terra Blast to beat ground types. Or something along those lines. It does have screens and stealth rocks as well, the spikes, so you could run like a fast support set with this, like a lead, setting up rocks, setting up screens, all that good shit. It doesn't have like taunt or anything like that. It does have iron defense and body press as well as a decent defense stat. I feel like this thing is going to be offensive more of the time because it's just a good offensive presence. This is one of those ones I think might become dominant in this tier because you've got some good Terra options with it, like maybe Terra Fire, Terra Flying to avoid other ground types, Terra Electric to just make yourself beefy as hell, Terra Water in order to beat ground types with Terra Blast. There's some options with this. I think this Pokemon is going to be pretty good. Scovillain. This thing has Chlorophyll. It's got decent offenses and pretty good move pool options like Fire Blast, Leaf Storm. I guess its move pool is a bit lacking, like especially on the physical side, and so you're probably going to use this special more often than not. Solar Beam and Fire Blast is a good combo, but you don't have like Earth Power. So if you want to hit like fire types, you're going to have to use Terra with like Terra Ground with Terra Blast or something. This thing is, once again, it's one of those things that like Brute Bonnet is going to be good on Sun, and currently Sun is not in this tier because there's no setters. Torkoal is OU, so I think this thing may end up dropping until we get a way of setting Sun up because it doesn't really have any utility outside of that. Like its support move pool is what, like Leech Seed and Will-O-Wisp, and that's it. Everything else kind of sucks. So yeah, this Pokemon is very dependent on a specific playstyle. I think until we see good setters for that playstyle, we're not going to see Scovillain in this tier very much. Slitherwing, on the other hand, I think we're going to see a lot of because this thing is insane. It's Heracross typing, like Heracross, Buzzwole typing, or good typing, and this thing is got decent stats. Very offensive. Its defenses, its bulk is decent, and the speed tier is very nice, especially with a Choice Scarf, right? Not to mention the booster energy you could run on this with photosynthesis, but with a Choice Scarf, I think it's got powerful moves. You've got Close Combat, you've got First Impression, which is fantastic. Lunge, I guess, is another decent option. And you've got U-Turn, which, like, once again, it's a fantastic. You got U-Turn, you got Earthquake to hit stuff that might switch in on you, like fire types maybe. You got Bulk Up, which is an option, and this thing could, I think, feasibly run Bulk Up with these defenses. I think it's gonna be a fantastic Choice Scarfer because that's great speed creep. There's a lot of base 80 Choice Scarfers, this takes you up to where you are outspeeding a lot of unboosted mons, right? A lot of unboosted threats. With that, this thing I think could do a lot. First impression would hit really hard with the choice band as well. So if you wanted to make this more of a wall breaker, I think close combat coming off this attack stat, especially if you Terra fighting or you Terra bug, that's gonna rack up kills like incredibly quickly. First impression is really strong, really strong, and priority is a big thing at the moment. I think this Pokemon is going to be one of the best in the tier. I don't think it's going to get banned or anything like that, but I think this thing is going to be really dominant, at least from what I've seen so far. Right, we're going to have to move on because there's too many of these Pokemon. Actually, you know what? I have a feeling I've missed something. I actually have missed something because I remember that. Flamigo. That's it. I knew there was something I was missing, and it's Flamigo. So I'm going to talk about this real quickly before I move on to the second box. This thing I think is going to be similarly to Slitherwing, really strong. Scrappy, fantastic. With similarly strong moves like Close Combat and Brave Bird. And this thing is not quite as strong, but with high base power moves like that, it's going to hit really hard, especially with a similar like Terra fighting or flying strat. Better speed. Also would be a good choice Scarfer, I think, because you got U-turn on this as well. And don't have Earthquake. This thing also has setup options, like genuine setup options like Swords Dance, as well as Bulk Up, which I think could be insanely threatening, especially with combination with Roost, right? Roost, Bulk Up. It's not as bulky, so it's definitely more of a fast offensive threat than it is like a potentially bulky one. But good moves, good move pool. Acrobatics as well. Acrobatics could be pretty effective, especially because you've got Endure. That could open up some strategies. Terra, I think, is going to be offensive with this thing mostly, just because you want to hit as hard as possible. Sorry, that's the one Pokemon I forgot on this list. There is a lot to go over. I'm kind of losing my mind a bit. So let's move on, shall we? Spidops. Not gonna beat around the bush. I think this thing kind of sucks. It's slow. Its stats are underwhelming. It's meant to be a support Pokemon, right? You've got some decent support options, right? You've got Memento, Spikes, and Sticky Web, as well as Taunt. But the abilities aren't very good. Like Stakeout, we talked about how Stakeout is good, but not on this Pokemon. This Pokemon's not hitting anything. Not with that attack stat. Insomnia is like whatever. This thing I think is going to be exclusively used on certain kind of teams, like Sticky Web teams, Sticky Web Hazard teams. I don't think it really gets much out of terastallizing. You don't want to spend your terastallize on something like this. This is not a good this is not a good target for your terastallization. This is going to be exclusively set up, I think. Like T-Spikes, Spike, Sticky Web, Taunt, kind of shit, Memento. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about that. Screamtail. I think this thing's really good. I've used this in OU already. This thing I think is fantastic. Really bulky, insanely bulky. Good typing. Right, it's God of War typing, pretty much. You got Dazzling Gleam. You've got a ton of support options on this thing, like Encore. You've got huge offensive move pool as well, but huge support move pool too. So you've got Encore, you've got Stealth Rock, you've got Thunder Wave, Wish, you've got dual screens. If this thing only had like Heal Bell, it'd be fantastic as a cleric, sort of stop to big threats. But as it is, I think this thing's going to be really good. It's a great stop to a bunch of different types of Pokemon, I think. It's a really good stop to some of those powerful fighting types that I just talked about that I think are going to be dominant. And it even has, I think, potential to go on the offensive as well with stuff like Calm Mind. And it's huge offensive options like Flamethrower, Ice Beam. Like, what do you want to hit? Stored Power as well. Stored Power with Calm Mind and then, Flamethrower or something like that. Or Wish with like Flamethrower, and then you could Terra. You'd probably want to Terra this thing defensively. More likely than not, maybe Fire to deal with Steel types, or Ground, or something like that. What else hits this thing pretty hard? Yeah, steel maybe. That would deal with poison and steel types. As a defensive option, maybe water as an all-round thing. This thing I think is going to be really good, and it's probably going to stay in the tier. Squawkabilly sucks dick. I'm getting more harsh with these as I go on because I'm just like running out of things to say for some of these. But this thing's bad. Like, look, its stats are not good. Its typing is like it's not. It's like Staraptor but worse. Intimidate, I guess it's got good abilities, kind of like Intimidate and Guts. I guess you could run this thing as a Gut Sweeper, but it's just like Swallow but worse. Like this is not, it's not fast enough, and it's not hitting hard enough, even with Guts. Your Flying Stab, I guess Brave Bird and Facade is a decent combo, but you don't have any other options to hit. Like your move pool is really shallow. I guess you've got Roost and Taunt and some other options, but I think this thing sucks, and this is gonna be like NU, maybe even PU if that still exists in this gen. Tatsugiri I think is interesting. It's got good typing. Its Storm Drain is a good ability. Its stats are okay. Mainly offensive. It's not quite as fast as you'd want it to be. It does have Nasty Plot though. And Nasty Plot with Draco and Hydro Pump, those are powerful moves. Hitting off that attack stat is going to be good, especially if you Terrastalize, for example, into Dragon or Water. You could also Terrastalize into something else to beat your checks. You could Terrastalize Steel to beat Fairy types, or you could Terrastalize, I guess, Fairy to beat other dragons. That'd be kind of interesting. Outside of those options, I think the move pool is a bit shallow, unfortunately. Rapid Spin is nice. I think this thing may see more of a support role because of Rapid Spin and Taunt, along with Memento. Maybe it's going to be C use in some of those setup teams. Chilling Water. Yeah, it's unfortunately his moves are pretty shallow outside of those. Like this is kind of the best things it gets. This thing I feel like may not stay UU, but you know, it depends on how people use it and how the meta shifts around it. I think it has the potential to be a threat. I don't know if it's bulky or fast enough to really pull that off. Because I think the typing isn't the problem, right? Like it's not the typing that's the issue. I think it's the stats, and especially since some of the stuff I know is in this tier now, I think it's going to be a bit outclassed. Tauros, there's 3 of these, and I don't know if I want to go over all 3 of them because I'm kind of going insane with this video. But this I think is going to be pretty good. It's Tauros, but like with better typing, right? I think Choice Band or Choice Scarf on this is insanely strong. With Intimidate is good utility there. It's got really strong moves. Flare Blitz, Close Combat, I guess Raging Bull you could use as well. Its signature move, which is like less risky than Close Combat and also hits through screens, which is nice. You've got Stone Edge, you've got Iron Head, Earthquake. You've got really good offensive options as well as bulk up. And this thing is reasonably bulky as well. Like 75, 105, 70 is okay. On the physical side, I think bulk up could really work with this. In terms of terrastalizing, I think bulk up with maybe terrastalize ground or something could be effective. On your choice sets, that you're probably going to want to just boost your power, remove some of your weaknesses, that kind of thing. There's 2 other forms which I think have potential as well. Let me just go down to them. The water, the basic one, the fighting one, I think is going to do a similar thing, just without the fire stab, obviously. And the water one, I think, this could be. I mean, it doesn't get. I think it's not as good because it doesn't get as strong moves, right? Like Liquidation is not as strong as Flare Blitz. Raging Bull is not as strong as Flare Blitz on this thing. Similar moves, and I guess the typing is decent. This thing could also be good. I see maybe one of them going down to a lower tier. Maybe the pure fighting one might do, and these ones might stick around. Or maybe this one will go down. It's hard to tell with these. Tinkerton has the best typing in the game, but it doesn't do much to make use of it because its stats are not good. Speed is awkward. 94 misses out on like base 95s. It's not the fastest thing in the world for an offensive Pokemon, which I think is what this is trying to be. Mold Breaker is a good ability, and it has Gigaton Hammer, which is a strong move, very strong move, but you can only use it once in a row. Then you have to like use a different move. Um, and that is effectively making up for its very lacking power. It does get Swords Dance to boost up, right, and Play Rough, which I think is decent. I think the main problem with this is going to be speed, and it's not really bulky enough to take on hits, even with its good typing. With Terrastalize, you might be able to overcome that, but I think its typing is so good that Terrastalizing might just make it worse. I don't know. Like this is like the Zacian typing. Um, it's good as it is, although I guess you could make Gigaton Hammer stronger, or you could remove some of its weaknesses. I think this is going to go lower in the tiering, unfortunately. But you know, it's a cool Pokemon. I think in lower tiers it might see a lot more use where there's like lower power. Toadscruel, this thing is really interesting. I think this thing is going to be a good defensive mon. I think Ground Grass is good defensive typing. It has Mycelium Might, which basically allows it to, as long as it goes last, so it like gives negative priority to status moves, but ignores abilities on them. So you can spore stuff with like you can spore Goldengo, for example. Obviously that's an OU, but you know what I mean. You can affect things that wouldn't normally be affected by your moves, uh, which is really cool. I think that means you can like taunt um, stuff as well that can't usually be taunted. You can, yeah, there's some good use of that. It's a good support move ball, I think. Leech Seed, Rapid Spin, Spike, Spore. I mean, there's fantastic moves, taunt, and it's got good stats as well. I think this thing could be a really useful defensive core. And like you've got an ice weakness, like a very big ice weakness, but you can cover that up with like Terra Steel, or I think Terra Water is going to be good on this thing, right? Because that kind of turns it into Tentacruel, basically. Um, but better because you're not weak to ground. Um, so yeah, I think this thing is going to be quite good. I think it's probably going to stay in the tier. Um, Possible Trick Room support, Toxic Spice support. Like it's just a fantastic support one. I think it's really good. Veluza. This seems kind of interesting. Um, it's got a move called Fill It Away, which is kind of like Belly Drum, but it's Shell Smash. Like you do the Belly Drum thing, but you get a Shell Smash boost basically, without the drops. So it's got decent enough stats to use this. Like if you're able to get this off, this thing hits really hard, especially with its ability Sharpness. Right, Sharpness in combination with Psycho Cut is a very powerful move. You got Liquidation as well. You got stuff like Drill Run to hit steel types. You can even Terrastalize in order to hit those types. Terrastalize ground with that. You'd have triple stab moves there with +2. That'd be very threatening. Its stats are a little bit underwhelming. I feel like this is the Pokemon where it does one thing. It sweeps with the thing, or it doesn't. Because its other options I think are a little bit limited. It's got some decent moves. It's got agility, I guess. Maybe you could agility with this instead of... But, like, this is such a good move. I think you're going to want to use this to sweep with it. Some people are saying Final Gambit with base 90 HP is a good idea as well, but I think that's a little gimmicky, personally. This is going to be okay, I think. Wochen. This is one of the Chinese legendaries. It's pretty bulky, and it's obviously even bulkier on the physical side because of this ability here. But I think this thing is just not as good as the others, and that's why it's here. The typing just isn't as good for taking hits. I think it's a bit too weak to, like, Grass just gives you too many weaknesses, I think. It's got some decent, options, some decent support stuff, like Foul Play, Knockoff, Leech Seed, Stun Spore, Taunt. This could be a decent defensive mon, I think, especially with Terrastalize. You could probably terrestrialize it into something like fairy or water. This is always going to be defensive terror on this thing, right? Um, I think with those, it might be decent at providing some support. Um, but dual screen support as well, possibly. It could be a decent stop to certain things, but I think overall, I don't know exactly how good this is going to be. I'm betting on it being a decent wall in this tier, but it may drop in the future. We'll have to see. I think it really depends on how offensive the metagame is going to be and whether this Pokemon can keep up with it. Okay, we end on Wugtrio, which is the funniest thing ever, and I hate it. I hate it and I love it at the same time, but it sucks. Um, its abilities are bad. Its stats are pretty much the same as Dugtrio's, right? But it doesn't do Dougie stuff. No Earthquake, no trapping. Uh, what else? What else can I say? This Pokemon is garbage. This is gonna be unused, untiered, without a doubt. Like if anything I've talked about today is gonna be untiered, this is gonna be it. This thing sucks. And with that, we have covered every new Pokemon that is currently UU, and I've given my opinion on all of them. I'm gonna maybe try and do some lives, some showdown lives in the future. I'm still kind of de-rusting myself and getting used to this new meta because everything's so insane. But maybe expect to see some content like that from me soon. And thanks for watching, I guess.